Power does not always reveal itself in volume or force. Often, the most decisive influence is quiet, subtle, and invisible to those who cannot sense the undercurrents of human behavior. Machiavelli understood that the world is not shaped by noise, but by intention, not by confrontation, but by quiet leverage. The strategist does not manipulate through aggression, he manipulates through understanding, timing, and silence. To manipulate a situation quietly is to guide reality without announcing your hand. It is the art of nudging perception, redirecting emotion, and reshaping outcomes while appearing perfectly natural. These methods are not loud, theatrical maneuvers. They are small shifts in tone, posture, timing, and suggestion that accumulate into control. In this lesson, we explore 15 subtle, precise ways to influence any situation without ever seeming involved. Each technique is a Machiavellian tool, calm, deliberate, and nearly invisible. They allow you to bend direction, steer conversations, expose motives, and command outcomes while maintaining the image of neutrality. These are the methods of quiet power. Let's begin. The outcome of any situation is decided long before words are spoken. The strategist manipulates quietly by establishing the frame, the invisible expectations, and emotional tone that shape how others perceive what follows. Whoever controls the frame controls the interpretation. Whoever controls interpretation controls the result. Begin by influencing perception before the encounter even begins. Arrive slightly later than expected to shift the room's rhythm. Enter calmly to reset the emotional temperature. Speak slowly to force others into your pace. Your tone becomes the anchor. Their behavior adjusts around it. This quiet control is often mistaken for confidence, but it is actually framing in motion. Set expectations subtly. If you walk in with the aura of someone who knows the direction, people assume you do. If you appear reflective rather than reactive, they become cautious. If you look composed while others are tense, the frame tilts toward your authority. Never start by asserting your perspective. Instead, observe the existing frame. Study how people speak, where tension builds, where insecurity hides. Then, with one steady comment or a controlled silence, shift the frame into alignment with your intention. Manipulation here is not deceit, it is influence, applied through presence. Before anyone realizes it, they begin thinking inside the structure you created. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools of quiet manipulation. People fear silence because it exposes their thoughts. When a strategist uses it deliberately, it becomes a mirror that forces others to reveal motives, insecurities, and intentions without ever being pressured. Silence is not absence, it is extraction. When you remain quiet, others rush to fill the space. They clarify points they were unsure of. They reveal emotions they wish to hide. They soften positions they intended to defend. In the discomfort of silence, people negotiate with themselves. This internal negotiation often benefits you more than any argument could. Silence also shifts power instantly. The one who speaks less appears more in control. The one who speaks more appears eager, uncertain, or defensive. By holding silence after a question, you compel the other person to expand their answer. By remaining still after a provocative comment, you force them to justify it. Use silence to study. Every flicker of emotion, every hesitation, every exaggeration becomes data. People show their true nature when they are uncomfortable, and silence creates that discomfort without a single word. In conflict, silence weakens aggression. In negotiation, it extracts concessions. In persuasion, it creates tension that others interpret as authority. A strategist does not rush to speak. He lets silence work for him. The quiet manipulator understands that questions can shape reality more effectively than commands. A well-crafted question directs thought, frames the issue, and guides the other person to conclusions that feel like their own. People resist orders but embrace ideas they believe they discovered themselves. Questions allow you to plant those ideas without appearing to influence anything. These are not random inquiries. They are directional questions, ones designed to limit the other person's mental options. For example, instead of asking, "What do you think we should do?" the strategist asks, "Which of these two options seems more stable to you?" A question that narrows the frame narrows the outcome. Use questions to expose contradictions. Ask, "What led you to that decision?" Or, How does that fit with what you said earlier? These prompts force others to reconcile their own inconsistencies without you confronting them directly. They begin adjusting their position quietly, believing the change came from reflection rather than influence. Use questions to control emotion. Ask, what matters most to you here? Or what outcome would make you feel relieved? This creates vulnerability without pressure. It also gives you critical insight into their motives, insight they may never reveal if asked directly. And use questions to steer decisions. If we move forward with this, what do you think the long-term effects will be? When someone answers this, they begin arguing for the outcome you already wanted, simply because they are exploring it internally. A strategist rarely argues, he guides, and he lets questions do the quiet work of changing minds. Pace is power. The speed at which a conversation moves determines who is reacting and who is directing. Most people speak quickly when emotional, uncertain, or eager to be understood. The strategist does the opposite. He slows the rhythm until others unconsciously sync to his tempo. Control the pace, and you control the atmosphere, the tone, and the flow of decision-making. Begin by speaking slightly slower than the room, not theatrically, just enough to force others to lean in. When you speak slowly, people interpret it as confidence. They assume you have nothing to prove and nothing to fear. Meanwhile, those who speak too fast appear anxious, defensive, or unfocused. Pace becomes psychological leverage. In negotiation or conflict, slowing down creates pressure. When someone pushes aggressively, respond with measured words and deliberate pauses. Their intensity collapses against your calm. They begin to doubt their own urgency. They start adjusting to your timing, not theirs. This alone can reverse the power dynamic. In persuasion, pause before answering important questions. The silence forces anticipation. It makes the other person interpret your next words as authoritative, even if they are simple. In decision-making, summarize slowly, allowing each idea to sink in. People are less likely to resist when you control the mental tempo. You can also accelerate when needed. A sudden quickening when used sparingly throws others off balance. It disrupts their thought process just long enough for you to introduce a new direction or close a decision. Pace becomes both shield and blade. Most people never consider speed as a tool, but Machiavelli understood that tempo shapes perception. Move too fast and you seem reckless. Move too slow and you seem evasive. Move deliberately and you quietly manipulate how others think, react, and follow. Quiet manipulation begins with information specifically. Who controls it? Most people talk too much, reveal too quickly, and expose their intentions without realizing it. The strategist does the opposite. He reveals almost nothing while learning almost everything. This asymmetry becomes an invisible form of power. When you share little, others fill the void with their own assumptions. They project their fears, hopes, and expectations onto you. These projections tell you far more about their psychology than any direct confession. A person who assumes hostility reveals insecurity. One who assumes agreement reveals desire. One who assumes judgment reveals guilt. Hold your thoughts back. Give only surface-level information, never the core. Speak in measured sentences that appear friendly but contain no strategic detail. Let others carry the conversation while you steer it with gentle cues. An occasional question, a slight raise of the eyebrow, a well-timed pause. By revealing little, you also become unpredictable. People cannot anticipate your moves because they lack the data to map your intentions. Uncertainty forces them to act cautiously around you, which increases your influence without you saying a word. Meanwhile, your silence creates the illusion that you are deep, thoughtful, or guarded for reasons they admire. They attribute meaning to your restraint and trust you more because you do not overshare. The less you reveal, the more others expose themselves. And the strategist collects this truth quietly, patiently, and without ever appearing to manipulate. Most people think manipulation requires dominance, confidence, or authority, but Machiavellian strategy understands something subtler. Controlled vulnerability can shape a situation far more effectively than overt strength. When used deliberately, vulnerability disarms defenses, lowers suspicion, and opens emotional pathways that allow you to guide the interaction quietly. This is not real vulnerability, it is selective disclosure. You reveal a small, harmless truth that makes you appear human, relatable, or sincere, something that suggests openness without exposing anything essential. When others sense vulnerability, they instinctively soften. They become more generous with information. They relax their guard because they believe you have lowered yours first. This creates a psychological debt. People feel compelled to reciprocate. If you admit a minor concern, they reveal a deeper one. If you share a light struggle, they share a significant motive. Their desire to match your openness becomes the source of your insight. Strategic vulnerability also prevents suspicion. When someone thinks you are hiding nothing, they stop searching. They stop questioning your intentions because you appear transparent. Meanwhile, you maintain full control of the information you choose to give. In conflict, a gentle admission, such as acknowledging a small mistake, redirects aggression. It reframes the situation from opposition to cooperation. People become more willing to compromise because they believe the power dynamic has equalized. In reality, you have merely shifted their emotional stance. In persuasion, a touch of vulnerability makes you appear trustworthy. It allows you to present ideas as shared concerns rather than directives. People follow willingly when they feel they are aligning with someone authentic. The strategist, however, never reveals true weaknesses. He shares only decoys, small imperfections that create connection while protecting the core. Used wisely, strategic vulnerability turns openness into influence, humility into leverage, and emotion into quiet control. Most people believe arguments are won through superior logic, but human behavior is not governed by logic, it is governed by emotion. Machiavelli understood that if you influence how someone feels, you influence how they think. Quiet manipulation therefore focuses on emotional redirection rather than intellectual debate. When someone is emotional, angry, defensive, anxious, excited, their reasoning collapses. They cling to whatever emotion dominates them. If you try to counter this with logic, you lose. But if you shift the emotional current, their entire perspective changes without them realizing why. Redirecting emotion begins with mirroring. Match their tone briefly, not fully, but enough for them to feel understood. Then gradually lower your tone, slow your pace, and soften your posture. People subconsciously sync to the emotional rhythm presented to them. You become the emotional anchor, and they drift into your state. If someone is angry, redirect to confusion. Ask calm questions that make them reconsider. What exactly are we solving here? Or, what outcome are you hoping for? Confusion dilutes anger. Anger cannot survive when someone starts thinking. If someone is anxious, redirect to certainty. Speak in grounded, steady phrases. Offer structure without promising outcomes. Here's what we can control. Here's the next step. Anxiety dissolves when the mind is given direction. If someone is overly confident or excited, redirect to caution. Ask about potential risks, but gently. People who feel they are being advised, not opposed, slow down their momentum without feeling challenged. And if someone is emotionally closed, redirect to curiosity. Ask about their experience or perspective in a way that makes them feel valuable. When curiosity enters, resistance fades. The key is subtlety. You are not controlling emotion, you are guiding it. You're shifting the wind, not forcing the storm. Once emotion is redirected, logic becomes pliable, and decisions begin to move quietly in your favor. In every situation, people instinctively gravitate toward the person who appears most certain. Certainty is psychological gravity. It pulls attention, shapes interpretation, and quiets resistance. Machiavelli understood that humans trust confidence more than accuracy, presence more than proof. Quiet manipulation, therefore, relies on projecting calm conviction, especially when others are unsure. Certainty does not require arrogance or dominance. It requires steadiness. When you speak, speak as though your words are already confirmed by reality. When you pause, pause without hesitation. When you act, act without explaining. This creates an aura of inevitability around your decisions. Others begin to assume you know something they don't. The power of certainty is amplified when the room is tense or divided. While others argue or rush, you remain composed. Your calm becomes a silent argument. It influences interpretation without direct confrontation. Even those who disagree with you begin to feel the weight of your stability. In negotiation, certainty becomes an anchor. When you state your position clearly and without emotional urgency, the other person interprets it as the baseline of the conversation. Their counteroffers adjust around your tone, not the other way around. In social dynamics, certainty creates subtle dominance. People check your reaction before finalizing their own. They measure their choices against your steadiness. But certainty must be measured. Too much, and you appear inflexible. Too little, and you lose authority. The strategist blends conviction with openness. He says, "Here's what makes sense to me," or "This is where I'm standing for now." The words are gentle, but the tone is unshakable. In truth, certainty works not because people believe you, but because it helps them believe themselves less. Their internal doubts make your confidence feel like safety. And once you become the emotional anchor, the situation quietly bends toward your will. One of the quietest and most effective forms of manipulation is controlled choice. People resist when they feel forced, but they comply willingly when they believe they are choosing freely. Machiavelli understood that influence is strongest not when you restrict options, but when you design them. Offer choices that differ in detail, not direction. 2 or 3 paths that all lead toward your intended outcome create the illusion of autonomy while preserving your control. For example, instead of asking, "Should we do this?" the strategist asks, "Would you prefer to move forward today or tomorrow?" The decision is already made, they simply choose the timing. This technique works because choice satisfies ego. People feel respected when asked for their preference. They shift from resistance to participation. Their sense of ownership increases, making them more committed to the decision. They no longer see the final outcome as something imposed upon them, but something they actively selected. When used subtly, controlled choices also diffuse conflict. Presenting options calms emotional resistance by directing attention toward comparison rather than opposition. The mind becomes busy deciding between alternatives instead of arguing against you. But the strategist avoids offering too many choices. Excess options overwhelm and provoke anxiety. 2 or 3 options are ideal, just enough to create freedom, not enough to distract. This method also protects you from appearing manipulative. You never pressure, demand, or argue. You simply guide. Every path serves your goal, yet the other person feels empowered, not controlled. Quiet power is not about forcing outcomes, it is about shaping the landscape so that every road leads where you intended. Confusion is a strategic fog. When used subtly, it slows reaction, weakens certainty, and buys you time. Machiavelli understood that people cannot resist what they do not fully understand. Confusion does not need to be dramatic. It can be a slight ambiguity, a gentle redirection, or a moment of unexpected silence that makes others pause just long enough for you to guide the situation. Confusion disrupts momentum. When someone is pushing aggressively, a vague statement or a calmly phrased question can cause them to reconsider. "What do you mean exactly?" Or, "Let's take a step back for a moment." This pause breaks their emotional flow. Once disrupted, they lose the intensity that made them difficult to influence. Confusion also hides your intentions. When people are unsure what you want, they cannot form opposition. They become cautious, reflective, even hesitant. You move while they are still trying to interpret your position. This is not deception, it is strategic opacity. You reveal nothing until the precise moment revealing becomes beneficial. In negotiation, confusion prevents premature demands. In conflict, it diffuses aggression by introducing uncertainty. In persuasion, it opens space for you to redefine the narrative before others anchor themselves to a fixed viewpoint. Use it sparingly. Too much confusion erodes trust. But a well-placed moment of ambiguity, an answer that is technically true yet incomplete, a pause that feels intentional, a comment that encourages reinterpretation, keeps others off balance in a gentle, controlled way. Confusion is not chaos, it is delay. Delay creates opportunity, and opportunity is the strategist's quiet victory. One of the quietest forms of manipulation is agreement, specifically, strategic agreement. When you agree lightly with someone's statement, you disarm their ego, calm their defenses, and make them feel validated. Once they relax, you redirect the conversation toward the outcome you want. Agreement becomes the doorway, redirection becomes the path. The key is subtlety. You don't fully endorse their point, you acknowledge it gently. Phrases like, "I see why you'd think that," or "That's one way to look at it," create harmony without committing to their viewpoint. Their mind interprets this as alignment, even though you have left room to shift direction. Once agreement lowers resistance, you introduce the redirection, not by contradicting them, but by expanding the frame. For example, That's true, and there's another angle worth considering. Or, absolutely. There's also this detail we might factor in. This technique works because people trust those who seem to understand them. When someone feels heard, they no longer feel the need to defend their position aggressively. Their emotional guard drops, making them open to influence they would have rejected if it came in the form of direct disagreement. Strategic agreement also protects your image. You appear balanced rather than combative, collaborative rather than controlling. Meanwhile, your gentle redirection allows you to shift the narrative, reframe the issue, or guide the decision without triggering the other person's ego. It is not deception, it is tempo. Agree softly to enter their world, then guide them quietly into yours. Timing is one of the subtlest tools of manipulation. Not what you say, but when you say it determines how others interpret your words. A delayed response, whether in conversation, messages, or decision-making, creates psychological weight. It signals that you are not rushed, not pressured, and not emotionally entangled. Delay transforms your silence into authority. Delayed responses work because people fill empty space with imagination. When you pause before answering, they wonder what you're thinking. When you take time before agreeing to something, they question the value of their own position. This uncertainty creates leverage. It makes them more cautious, more revealing, and more receptive once you finally speak. The strategist does not delay out of pettiness. He delays with purpose. A measured pause before giving an opinion suggests consideration. A slow response to provocation shows emotional control. A gap before committing to a decision forces the other person to show their priorities or insecurities. In negotiation, delayed responses extract concessions. The other party becomes anxious and begins adjusting their offer preemptively. In conflict, delay diffuses aggression and exposes true motives. In persuasion, it creates anticipation that makes your final words feel heavier. This technique also protects your inner world. By never responding instantly, you avoid impulsive mistakes. You give yourself time to read the dynamics, evaluate your intention, and choose the angle that serves your strategy. But timing must be calibrated. Too much delay creates annoyance. Too little creates passivity. The strategist chooses the exact moment when silence transforms into impact, letting others feel the gravity of your presence before your words ever arrive. With time as your ally, even a single sentence can shift the entire situation. Direct persuasion often triggers resistance. People push back when they feel pressured or instructed, but when an idea appears to arise naturally within their own mind, they embrace it without hesitation. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful influence is one where the target never realizes they were influenced at all. This is the art of indirect suggestion. The strategist does not say, "You should do this." He plants the seed. He introduces information, stories, or observations that gently guide the other person toward the desired conclusion. For example, I've seen people get incredible results when they, or it's interesting how often the best outcomes come from, you give them a shape, not a command. Their mind does the rest. They begin connecting the dots themselves, and because the idea feels self-generated, they defend it, commit to it, and execute it more passionately than if it had been imposed. Indirect suggestion works because it protects the other person's ego. It allows them to feel intelligent, perceptive, and in control. Meanwhile, you maintain the appearance of neutrality while quietly steering the direction. It is especially effective in moments of uncertainty. When someone is unsure, they look for subtle cues. By offering a story or reflection rather than a directive, you become the silent architect of their decision. Never underestimate the power of a thought planted gently. What you whisper indirectly can echo far louder than anything you state outright. Most people behave differently when attention is on them. Their composure changes, their narratives shift, their true motives slip through. The strategist uses this phenomenon quietly. By shifting the spotlight through a question, a gesture, or a moment of redirected attention, you expose what others work hard to conceal. This is not interrogation, it is gentle illumination. When someone is speaking vaguely, you ask, "And what made you feel that was the right moment?" When someone is pushing too hard, you lean back and say, "Help me understand your priority here." These small acts turn the focus toward their reasoning, their motivations, their inconsistencies. Under this light, people reveal everything you need to know. The key is subtlety. You are not accusing or challenging, you are inviting. Invitations lower defenses. People open themselves because they believe you are genuinely curious, not suspicious. In that moment of openness, they disclose emotions, strategies, and fears they never intended to show. Shifting the spotlight also buys you time. While they speak, you observe. Their facial expressions, hesitations, tone shifts, and contradictions become your map. The more they reveal, the less you need to speak. Your silence becomes the frame that contains their truth. In negotiation, placing the spotlight on someone forces them to justify their position, often weakening it. In conflict, it forces them to expose their emotional state. In persuasion, it clarifies what they truly want, often something different than what they claim. Quiet manipulation is not confrontation. It is redirection. And when you redirect attention intelligently, you gain far more information than any direct demand could ever obtain. This final method is the signature of a Machiavellian strategist. Wait until all others have revealed their intentions, then act swiftly and cleanly. Deciding late does not mean procrastinating, it means observing long enough to understand the full landscape before influencing it. Most people rush decisions out of anxiety or eagerness, exposing their position early. The strategist does not. He lets others show their hands first. By deciding late, you gather every advantage. You see who is emotional, who is strategic, who is weak, who is hiding something. You identify alliances and fault lines. You witness how people behave under pressure. While they commit prematurely, you remain uncommitted, unreadable, and unthreatening. Then, when the moment is right, you act decisively. Not loudly, but with clarity. The contrast between your patience and your action creates shockwaves. People interpret your timing as wisdom, not delay. They assume your move was inevitable, even if it was improvised. In negotiation, this method wins concessions. In conflict, it gives you the final psychological strike. In leadership, it makes your voice the one everyone listens to because you speak last and solidify direction. Deciding late gives you information. Acting decisively gives you impact. Combined, they form one of the most efficient forms of silent influence. You allow others to build the structure, and then you quietly claim the highest floor. Quiet power is not a performance, it is a discipline. These 15 methods are not meant to be used loudly or recklessly, but with precision, patience, and self-control. When you guide situations without force, when you influence outcomes without exposure, you enter the realm Machiavelli understood best. Power that moves in silence. Use these techniques responsibly. Study them, refine them. Let them become invisible tools you carry everywhere, not to dominate, but to navigate the world with clarity and advantage. If you want more Machiavellian insights like these, subscribe, stay vigilant, and return for the next lesson where strategy deepens and your mastery grows.